were to write a movie, if I was in Hollywood and I wanted to put a movie script together, I might come up with the following premise. I would showcase the horrific 9/11 terror attacks in New York City that were motivated by radical Islam. I would start with the horrific terror attack, the worst we've ever suffered on American soil, at the hands of radical jihadists and Islamists. Then, years later, in this fictional Hollywood movie that I would write, I'd have the voters of New York elect a Muslim mayor. Then I would show a scene where a couple of ISIS-inspired terrorists hurled improvised explosive devices at protesters and cops. Then I'd have that mayor in my Hollywood movie refuse to condemn radical Islam, would repeatedly fail to denounce the origins of an ISIS-inspired attack. In fact, that fictional mayor, I'd call him Zoran. Mayor Zoran would invite a guy named Mahmoud Khalil to dinner at Gracie Mansion, where the mayor lives. And I'd have it captured in a Norman Rockwell-style picture, complete with warm lighting and a tapestry on the wall, as they sat together and broke the fast together. Mahmoud Khalil, a guy who, for the record, has publicly defended armed resistance, who justified the October 7th massacre as something that had to happen to break the cycle, and did so while repeating the blood libel that Israel is committing an ongoing genocide. Think about that for just a moment. My Hollywood movie. The mayor of New York, home to the largest Jewish population outside Israel, is hosting a man at dinner who rationalizes the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. This is the guy in control. And as you know, sadly, it's not a Hollywood movie. It's reality. A lot of smart things are being written about the unfortunate events of the last few days. I love what Clay Travis wrote, what he posted on social media about this picture. I mean, you can't believe this photograph. Nice, warm, fuzzy lighting, and they're smiling, and there's Mrs. Mamdani, you know, the private citizen. There she is, gazing down lovingly. And Clay Travis wrote, posting a celebratory photo of an anti-Israel college protester who should be deported next to your non-public figure wife who cheered the rape and murder of Jews on October 7th, the day after two radical Muslims threw pipe bombs on your sidewalk. Well, that's a hell of a choice, Mamdani. But it is a choice. It's a choice that he's making. And New Yorkers are stuck with it. I left that part out, that the First Lady of New York has favored and liked pro-Hamas posts on social media. That's the mayor of New York City's wife, who clearly is every bit as radical as the worst of the worst. If there's anything about October 7th that you think is acceptable or appropriate or positive, you're a wicked, evil, vile creature. Kevin McCullough over at Town Hall writes, New York City this week witnessed something that should shock every American. 2 attackers hurled improvised explosive devices at a group of pro-American demonstrators gathered to protest the repeated shutdown of public areas in the city for formal Muslim prayer gatherings. Now, you may disagree with that protest. You may feel that Muslims have every right to shut down big areas of the public in New York for mass prayer. But we all can agree that those protesters were exercising the most basic constitutional right that Americans possess, the right to assemble and express dissent. Kevin writes, what happened next tells you everything about the moment we're living in. Instead of condemning the attack unequivocally, New York's mayor immediately began explaining that the demonstrators themselves were somehow responsible. According to the mayor, the people targeted by the explosives were bigots. Think about that for a moment. Think about that. The protesters are to blame for the 2 men from Pennsylvania who hurled IEDs at them. It's the protesters' fault. And meanwhile, the people, as Kevin writes, who threw the explosive devices are treated by the political class as misunderstood. But the most astonishing reaction came from the media. You got to hear this. This was actually posted on the CNN X account. I'm not making this up. I'm going to read it word for word. At CNN. 2 Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day, enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change, as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home. That's CNN. That's not Al Jazeera. That's CNN. The teenagers are the victims here, don't you know? They just wanted to enjoy the nice warm conditions. They were going for a stroll through the park. It was warm that day. It was abnormally warm. And their lives would change. Well, CNN, what caused their lives to change? Did they get hit by a meteor? Maybe somebody pushed them in front of a subway? Oh, no. They threw bombs at American citizens, causing their lives to drastically change. They could have just had a normal day. I'm telling you what, we are in dark times. And, you know, as somebody just texted from Arizona, Mike, in your movie, you left out the scene showing Muslims being called to prayer en masse 5 times a day in Times Square. Oh, yeah, that part, I left that part out, didn't I? Oh, I left a lot out. I left a lot out of the movie. Rich Lowry wrote a terrific piece over at the New York Post. He talked about the famous expression by Irving Kristol, a neoconservative is a liberal who has been mugged by reality. That's what happened to progressive influencer Walter Masterson Saturday. He was telling far-right provocateur Jake Lang a thing or two about New York values before he got interrupted by an act of Islamic terrorism. This is the guy standing there with the bullhorn. Maybe you've seen the video. And one of the bombers throws the IED right over the guy's head. The guy was screaming in the bullhorn about what a welcoming, inclusive place New York City is. Rich Lowry says Masterson's brush with injury or death has caused him to keep inveighing against Jake Lang and the protesters. You know, hey, some people in New York City throw bombs, some don't. Diversity is our strength. Rich Lowry says none of this is to deny that Jake Lang, a pardoned January 6th rioter, is a poisonous toad. He was leading a small, buffoonish demonstration against the supposed takeover of New York City by Muslims when the attack happened. Now, you may or may not agree with Rich Lowry's assessment just there, but you can't disagree or find fault with the next line he writes. Engaging in First Amendment protected activity is not in the same moral universe as trying to kill people. Someone might want to get that message to Mayor Mamdani or Kathy Hochul, the governor, who did the same thing. She put them both on the same playing field, the protesters and the ISIS bomb throwers. And Lowry goes on to point out that Mamdani didn't name the perpetrators in his initial statements. He didn't note that they were attempting to kill Jake Lang or call out their Islamic extremism. The mayor's narrative of Islamic victimhood runs so deep that it is presumably hard for him to process that two Muslim men were more hateful and dangerous than their right-wing adversaries. In a better world, Mamdani would have a lot of credibility condemning the threat represented by Islamic extremism and backing Muslims who are in the trenches against the radicalism represented by the two bomb throwers, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Qayyumi. These are true fanatics. They told the cops that we take action. Blessed is the name of the prophet. Die in rage, they said, to the non-believers. Asked whether he wanted to commit another Boston Marathon-style massacre, he said, no, bigger. Boston was only 3 deaths. Both Balat and Qayyumi are the children of immigrants. And another indication that the assimilative apparatus in the United States is far from perfect. Rich Lowry concludes by saying, if someone had predicted, back to my fictional movie that I was going to write, if someone had predicted that Islamic zealots would be lighting bombs on the streets of Zohran Mamdani's New York City and shouting Allahu Akbar before trying to carry out a massacre worse than the 2013 Boston Marathon, the mayor and others on the left surely would have considered that a sick right-wing fantasy. How dare they try to divide us with such rank prejudice, they would say. But this really happened, and they should adjust their worldview accordingly if they don't want to keep getting mugged, or even worse, by reality.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.